In our Bible classes, we have been talking a lot about the home, and rightly so, because that's the theme of our study this quarter. But we have been talking a lot about the home, assuming its existence. And we have not talked much about the preparatory part on the front end of establishing a home, marriage, and all of the thought and planning and purposing that should go in to that. Tonight I want to do a little bit of backtracking and go back to the subject of seeking a companion. And I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone tonight. The specific outline, or the particular outline that I am using, is from Gus Nichols. And so I have talked about Brother Nichols and incorporating some of his lessons into my preaching this year. And so this is coming from both angles. It's interesting that this material was from the 1960s, and yet the practical nature of it still is very evident today. And you might think as we go through this, well, I'm already married. How is this helpful to me? Well, typically the things that you would talk about in preparation for marriage are really the same things that you talk about when there are problems or challenges in marriage. So while we're looking at the idea of being single and establishing a relationship tonight and thinking about these things on the front end, you might find yourself already in a relationship where you have to think about these things as an individual and making sure that you're meeting these criteria or these purposes and characteristics in your marriage relationship. The particular lesson was entitled, as Brother Nichols gave it, "What Should One Look For in Seeking a Companion?" And the title is very telling because the operative or key word, I believe, in that is the word seeking. And I like that word better than choosing, because choosing is what you do when you have some options lay before you, and you might not have much control over those options that you're choosing from. But seeking is very proactive, and in seeking, you go out looking for the very thing that you are interested in. There are a number of various points that are all biblically centered. Not enough, or there's too much for one sermon tonight, so I'm going to do this tonight and then come back to it on next Sunday night as well. And so we'll just step our way through this list, allowing that to be the general outline for our study tonight. The first point that Brother Nichols gives in reference to seeking a companion is the word implication. Or what he means is there's something implied in the subject of this sermon. And what is implied is that the one looking will be him or herself a good companion. Now, it's one thing to look for someone you want to marry or spend the rest of your life with, and you have a list of qualities that you expect them to meet, but what about you? And so implied in this is that you are going to be the kind of person that you are looking for. And I think of Romans chapter 2, verses 21 and 22, where Paul said, "You therefore who teach another, do you teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples?" In that is the idea that what I'm expecting of someone else is quality or characteristic that I'm willing to possess myself. I'm going to be the kind of person myself that makes a fit candidate for a marriage relationship. I'm not going to expect the other person to be, for me, something that I'm not willing to be for them. And so this advice that we're giving, that we're talking about tonight and in the subsequent lesson, is assuming some things. Implied in this very study is the idea that this is for advice for a Christian man or woman who is going to be of good Christian character themselves. Because it doesn't do any good for me to expect something that I'm not willing to be myself. So there's implication. The second idea or concept that is given in seeking a companion for marriage is the idea of disappointment. And in the form of a question, why? If marriage is such a great thing, and God ordained it, and God is perfect in His wisdom and in His knowledge, why is there so much disappointment in marriage? And we live in a society and culture today that statistically 6 out of 10 married people are unhappy. 4 out of 10 have questioned or considered leaving their relationship. How do you get from point A to point B in this regard? From the point of being a person who's determined and resolved that I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, and there is nothing in this world that could drive a wedge between us. How do you get to the point, and how do we get to the point of us as a society where 6 in 10 are unhappy and 4 in 10 have considered leaving? And you likely know the statistics, somewhere around 50% do end up divorcing. How do we get there as a society? I would say unrealistic expectations that things are going to be perfect. We have unrealistic expectations about marriage, and that our marriage partners are going to be perfect. Now, we all know we put on a good show up front, and oftentimes, our flaws are not readily evident. But it would be foolish to expect a person is going to be perfect and that they're not going to have any faults or areas where they need to improve. In 1 John chapter 1 and verse 8, again, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. There just aren't any perfect people. Now that's no excuse not to try to be. But we're often unhappy because our expectations are not realistic. We have failed with the essential ingredients ourselves as marriage partners. Things like long-suffering, things like forbearance, things like a genuine willingness to forgive when those imperfections come to the surface. So in marriage, there is a reality of disappointment. And when you're looking at it from the front end and you're analyzing other marriages and you see unhappiness, you see disappointment, especially in the societal picture. Not to say that the church is excluded from this, because it's not. Because the church is made up of people, and people are imperfect. But you have to ask, why are so many expectations not met in marriage? It may just be that far too many of us are expecting unrealistic things. We are expecting people to be perfect. The third one that Brother Nichols gives is agreement. In marriage, you need to expect to be agreed in some areas. In Amos chapter 3 and verse 3, Amos asks the question. It's an inspired rhetorical question. He's not really looking for an answer. Can 2 walk together except they be agreed? And there are so many areas of life as a husband and wife where that's absolutely essential. There are some areas where it's not, right? Your wife may not like football on Saturday, and that's, she doesn't have to watch football. There are some areas where it doesn't matter, but there are some areas where it absolutely does matter. When it comes to morals, when it comes to religious ideas and principles and truths when it comes to the goals that you are going to set for your relationship. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, Paul gave the admonition, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness, and what communion has light with darkness? Now, I'm not an opposer to the degree of saying a Christian can't marry a non-Christian. But you have to think about that and what you can expect in that situation and that marriage. And I know some have turned out great. You know, my own family history turned out great in that regard, but they don't always do that. There are areas where you're going to have to agree. And so where is this person in those areas? Where are they when it comes to morality? Where are they when it comes to the religious nature of your family and the goals that you're going to set? You know, in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 26, Jesus taught about the wise man and the foolish man and building their house on two different kinds of foundations. And one is built on rock and one is built on sand. And the one that's built on rock is a commendable, fortified, reliable foundation. The one built on sand is not. It just crumbles when the weight is on it. And so if I'm going to enter into a marriage relationship and I'm not going to give any consideration on the forefront or the front end about our agreement, then what I'm saying is I'm okay with the possibility of making my foundation out of a mixture of rock and sand. I'm okay with that. And that's not going to be a rock foundation. It's going to be a rock sand foundation. You may very well marry someone who is not a Christian and that turn in to great things. May very well work out. I know many that have. But to not even think about that on the front end before you enter into it, to not even think about the necessity of agreement in important areas will likely turn into a tragic mistake. The fourth one is what Brother Nichols calls the court of inquiry. And he's talking about courtship. I like the word courtship because the word court is in courtship. And when you have court, you have a hearing. You have discovery. And you learn things in this court. And the dating period, the courtship period, whatever you call it before you enter into a marriage is so important for discovery. Learning about one another so that you know what to expect. You don't go get married and then enter into court and discovery. Because in God's design and plan for marriage, once you are married, you're married. Whether you failed to do the discovery or not. In the opportunities that I've had to work with couples who were going to get married, to do premarital counseling, that is one area where I focused to help them have court with one another and to ask a lot of these questions that will generate discussion and help with discovery. Some of the material that I use, I'm just going to kind of step through some of it. And, you can think about this in your own mind. One part of the material is called the successful marriage. Two people come from stable, happy families of similar backgrounds who have tested their relationship through a sound courtship and engagement period of 2 or more years and who have resources in personality traits, character, common interests, shared goals, and similar beliefs should be able to anticipate a successful and satisfying marriage. And here are some important areas that this material suggests talking about. Personality characteristics. Is the person of a pleasant disposition? Do they have a sense of humor? You think, well, how biblical is that? Well, I'm just telling you, in marriage, some things that come up, if you can't laugh about it, you don't have a good outlet for it. You need to have a good sense of humor. Ability to give and take. Cooperative. Understanding and compassionate. Unselfish and generous. Someone who takes initiative. Interested in the point of view of others. Is this a person, in my discovery, am I learning that this is a person who only cares about the way they see it? Okay, you're thinking, all right, well, I'm already married. Well, then ask yourself, am I the kind of person who's only interested in my point of view? Or can I listen to other people's, especially my mates? Someone who's honest and straightforward, someone who's thoughtful and appreciative, someone who's calm and quietly self-assured. And then underneath this, there's a box for husbands and wives, and one of them is satisfactory, and the other one is needs improvement. Okay, so think about the person as you enter into these situations where you're thinking about marriage. Think about the person and these kinds of qualities. Interactions of personality characteristics of husbands and wives. Here's another area. Personality characteristics relate rather than conflict. You know, how do our personalities gel right now in our discovery and courtship period? Do we relate to one another, or is there conflict all the time? Do they complement or they collide? Am I satisfactory here, or is there a need for improvement? Here's another area, mutuality. The two people have a number of interests which can be shared. Are we just completely opposite with no interest that we share? Interests which are not shared, are they appreciated? You know, does she appreciate your interest in football? Or whatever? Shared value systems, ethical, religious. We talked about that some already. Social. Do they have common goals? Confident in each other's direction in life? Agreement on ends to be accomplished. How many people do you think in our world today even think about things like this? Not very many. Think about compatibility and ability to live together. It's so superficial today. Similar beliefs, agreement on church, theological system, philosophy of life. You know, is there area for improvement? Well, you need to talk about that on the front end. A successful marriage is one in which the following situations exist. Here's some more to this. Each has a feeling of personal fulfillment. Does the relationship allow you to feel fulfilled personally? There is a sense of partnership or relatedness. Now am I getting the sense that this is going to be something that's all on me, or are we going to work at this together? Empathy is increasingly felt. Am I about to marry somebody who cares how I feel, who wants to understand how I feel and why I feel that way and how they might play into that? Or are they completely off in their own world? Again, a sense of humor. That's come up twice. I'm telling you, it's not a bad characteristic. Here's another. Communication becomes an even or ever increasing possibility. And communication is something that we have to work at. But is it getting better or is it getting worse? Now, these are good things to watch for. Acceptance is manifest in the relationship. This is a person who accepts me as who I am. They're not going to immediately try to start changing me to be somebody that they want me to be. Adaptability. Is this someone who can adapt to a relationship? Or have they become so accustomed to being on their own that they have their patterns, their life, their world established, and I'm going to have to try to find a way to fit into that? Another, movement toward common goals can be observed. The more time we spend together, is it the case that we are starting to move toward a common goal, at least in our thinking and our talking about it? One exercise that I really enjoy is a roles concept worksheet. And there's a statement in the center, and then there are on each side, there's a column for the wife and a column for the husband, and you rank these things 1 to 5 of importance. And so I give this to the marriage candidates to fill out separately. And then we come back and we look at them together. So you think about some of these and how you would relate this. And, if you're at that point or when you get to that point, think about how your mate might relate to these and how far off they might be from you. The husband is the head of the family. The wife should not get a job. Now, these are not right or wrong things. They're just opportunities for discovery. To see how he or she feels about these things and how different that might be from me. The husband should help with the dishes. Money that the husband earns is his money. Money that the wife earns is her money. The wife should always have the meals on time. You might think, nah, that's 5. I definitely disagree. Well, what if he puts 1? I definitely agree with that. You need to do some discovery on the front end. Money can best be handled through a joint checking account. Money can best be handled through separate checking accounts. The husband should babysit 1 night a week so the wife can get away and do what she wants, or vice versa. The husband and the wife should go to church together. The husband and wife should plan the budget and manage money matters together. Here's one. Neither should purchase an item over $10 without consulting the other. Okay, I admit this was done in the 60s. $10. Can't even take the toll road for that. The wife should always have the house neat and clean. The best word to describe a parent's relationship with a child is pal. Likely to be some disagreement there in some situations. Children do better with stern parents who are strict disciplinarians. Neither husband nor wife should bring dependent parents into the home to live. You see, a lot of these things don't come up until much later in life. It's the court of inquiry. An opportunity to get to know the person that you are saying, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. A couple of more of these. Arguments are detrimental to marriage relationships. How do you rate that? In other words, how do you handle disagreements? Are you of the mindset that any argument or discussion above a certain level is absolutely forbidden? We just drop it and we don't talk about it? Or are you the kind of person who wants to drill down and get to the solution so you can move on past it? I hope you understand that if 2 people enter into a relationship who are on opposite extremes of this, the way to handle things like this, you've got a problem. That I'm not saying you can't work through it, but it would be better to work through it on the front end to know what you're dealing with, how you view these things that inevitably will come up in marriage. Here's one more. Would you see this the same? It is often better to conceal the truth to avoid unpleasant situations. Would you agree on that? I bring all of that in just to show, I hope, the importance of this court of inquiry. Taking the time to get to know one another and understand who this person is. They may be everything you hope for. They may be perfect as far as you're concerned. but they may not be. And they may have some things to work on. Or you may have some things to work on before you tie that knot. What is his highest authority in life? What is her highest authority in life? How does he view the church, or she view the church? I mean, hopefully it's going to be a Psalm 119, 104, and 105 situation. Through your precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light unto my path. But I want to know that on the front end. Don't you? I want to know if this is the way this person thinks. I know I have feelings for them. I know I have affection for them. I know I like being with them and spending time. But what about the court of inquiry? Where we use words to communicate and understand one another. So that's the court of inquiry. Here's another, 2 or 3 more of these. Where to look. Where do you look for a mate? You know, the greatest catastrophe that this world has known in the global flood was precipitated by a situation of unequal yoking together. In Genesis chapter 6, two lines of people, those who were sons of God and those who were not. And most people believe that to be the descendants of Seth and the descendants of Cain. Those who were aligned with the will of God, they were sons of God. And those who weren't, they were under an influence that wasn't that way. And you have the sons of God taking to them the daughters of men in marriage. And then immediately in that context, God goes into a description of a fallen world, how things have changed. Every imagination of the thoughts of men's hearts are only evil continually. And the point is, people who were in alignment with God went looking in the wrong place for marriage mates. And the next thing you know, God is flooding the world. I don't know that there'll be a flood if you pick the wrong person, a flood of problems maybe, but the point is this: where do you look for a mate? Maybe in the congregation. Maybe in congregations. You know, that Roanoke Church of Christ is not the only sound congregation in the brotherhood. So maybe in another congregation of God's people. Maybe events that are hosted and sponsored by churches of Christ. Maybe there are people in your life that live in other places, maybe family members who have a genuine interest in your well-being and care about you, who are aware of people in the congregation where they are, who might be someone you would be interested in talking to. But the point is, if you're going to find somebody who is similar to you in many of the substantive ways we've talked about, you need to look in the right places for them. Here's the next one. Inward beauty. Look for inward beauty. You know, so much about relationships today that is outward. But a life lesson with universal value is to see people the way God sees them. To look at people the way God looks at them. And I think of 1 Samuel 16 and verse 7, where God told Samuel, do not look on appearance or stature, because that's where man looks. But God looks upon the heart of the individual. And don't just shop outward, shop inward. And look for the inner beauty of the person. Get to know who they are on the inside. And nobody's perfect, but it's logical to want to know what goes on the inside, because that's going to manifest itself outwardly. You've got to dig deeper than the external and superficial. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11 says, what man knows the things of a man except the spirit of the man that's in him? For so no one knows the things of God except the Spirit of God. The only way to know the Spirit or the inward person is to communicate with words and get to know them. Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 30 says, charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So there's great value and benefit in looking at the inward person and getting to know them much deeper than superficial. And then one other, a weakness. Is this person going to make me weak, or are they going to help me to be even stronger? The Bible warns about evil associations. Evil associations corrupt good morals. 1 Corinthians 15:33, companionship. Think about 1 Kings chapter 11 in the description of Solomon. He loved many women, foreign women who were idolatrous women. And 1 Kings chapter 11 and verse 4 says they turned his heart away from God. And you look at Solomon, you think, well, he was rich, he was powerful, he was wise, and even in all of that, the choices that he made relative to wife or wives exploited a weakness in him. And so they turned his heart away. Weakness. And so there's more to just the superficial, the external, when we're choosing someone that we're going to spend the rest of our lives with. Here are some things to think about. Implication, the matter of disappointment and why, the need to be agreed, the court of inquiry, where to look for a mate, look for the inward beauty of the person, and think about your weakness and how that person is going to affect you negatively or positively. The second half of this lesson, we'll look at some other matters important to this area. One, that some people don't have a right to marry because of their history with marriage. And so you gotta know about that and dig into that. They need to seek a helper, someone of mutual trust, someone who practices the golden rule. We'll talk about money, and we will talk about the importance of seeking someone who's happy with life in general. We'll talk about that next week. We've spent enough time talking about this tonight. I hope that it has been helpful to those who are not there yet, and maybe some reflective benefit for those of us who are already there. Tonight, if you need to respond to heaven's invitation to either obey the gospel through faith, repentance, confession, and baptism for the remission of your sins, we're here excited to assist you to that end. Maybe you have interest in studying God's Word. We're ready to help in that regard. Maybe as a child of God, there's some situation in your life tonight that you feel you need to get right, and that in a public way. We want you to know we're here to encourage and help in that regard. If you have any need tonight, we hope you'll come as we stand and sing.